Of course, the third sector plays an invaluable role.
Graham Stewart.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Prime Minister's statement and his specifically ruling out the threat of creeping normalisation, because this House should be under no doubt that Putin is well prepared. He has hundreds of billions of foreign currency reserves. He has a military that has been tested. And will the Prime Minister do everything he can to convert the current intent into frameworks that cement our intent over time, because he is betting on the fact that it won't be.
My honourable friend is absolutely right, because the plan that the G7 have agreed on and our friends and partners have agreed on is that Putin must fail. Putin must not succeed in this venture. But we've got to put in place all the steps we need to take, diplomatically, economically, and yes, militarily, in order to ensure that that is the case. And that's what we're doing.
Very good.
The Prime Minister is right to have set out the most stringent possible set of sanctions against the government of Russia. Can he outline for the House what the implications will also be for cooperation at the International Space Station?
I thank him. I thank him very much. We will have to see what further downstream effects there are on collaboration of all kinds. I must say that hitherto I have been broadly in favour of continuing artistic and scientific collaboration, but in the current circumstances it's hard to see how even those can continue as normal.
Sir John Hayes.
Speaker, the mix of practice and principle is the test of democratic politics, exemplified at its best when this House comes together in common cause. The test of leadership is the mix of vision and will, and the Prime Minister is to be commended for his willful, clear-sighted determination. So will he now reassure the House that he's in close touch with those countries close to Ukraine, where nerves will be frayed, and that will he send them an urgent message that this House and this nation will always stand alongside and behind free nations?
He is, the right honourable gentleman, as so often, is precisely right, and that's why, together with my right honourable friends, the Defence Secretary, the Foreign Secretary, we've been visiting Poland, Romania, the Balts, all those who are now feeling such deep unease at what is happening.
Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we speak, the Softcom-Flot tanker NS Challenger is berthed at Sullomvo in Shetland, taking on a load of crude oil for export. Softcom-Flot, as the Prime Minister may know, is a company owned and operated by the Russian government. My constituents, Mr. Speaker, are asking me why they should be loading oil onto a Russian tanker while Russian troops are marching into the Ukraine. I cannot think of any good answer to give them. So, can the Prime Minister tell me, will anything that he has announced today ensure that that will not happen again in the future?
Well, I can tell him, thank him very much, and I will of course immediately investigate what is happening with the Softcom-Flot oil tanker. But the result of the measures that the House passed the other day is that we can now target any entity, any company that has any relation with the Russian state. So we have that power.
Tim Bolton.
Speaker, tyrants and megalomaniacs invade countries because they think they can get away with it. And the way to deal with bullies is to stand up with them. So I'm sure he will acknowledge that the way the West responds to this aggression will have repercussions not just for Russia and Ukraine, but for other bullies like China as well. And will he be mindful of the need to show support to Russia's smaller southerly neighbours, especially Georgia and Armenia, who feel particularly vulnerable at this time?
Yes, I thank him. He's right, because the read across, the knock-on is obvious for Georgia and Armenia. What he proposes to create, Putin, is a new sphere of influence, a new Yalta, in which those countries come behind his new Iron Curtain.
Stephen Wakefield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member of this House with Ukrainian heritage, this issue particularly troubles me. I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for his tone of his statement and the resolute and swift action that he's proposing in tackling Russia, but the resolute and swift support he's offering to the people of Ukraine. During his speech, he also highlighted the issues of the cost of living and the rise of fuel prices. Could he also touch on what further action the government will take in order to address that issue?
I thank him very much, and I think he's quite right, because I think people across the country will be thinking about the effect on us all of the increase in the price of oil and gas as a result of a war in Ukraine. We will continue to do everything we can to help people to abate the cost, to support people through councils, through all the funds that we're giving, the reduction in council tax, Mr. Speaker. But the best thing that we can do is ensure that people are in good, well-paying jobs, and that is in that we are certainly succeeding. But in the medium and the long term, we've got to have more self-reliance in this country on our own energy supplies, and that is what this government is also committed to building.
Geoffrey Clifton-Brown.
Mr. Speaker, one of the most important economic sanctions we can take against Russia is by freezing its sovereign debt. Will my right honourable friend confirm that the bill proposed on Monday on economic crime will include powers to do so?
Mr. Speaker, we're taking the most powerful measures against Russia and the Russian economy that have ever been taken. I think probably the most powerful ever taken by any country. And Russia will no longer be able to raise any sovereign debt on UK markets.
Olivia Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the Prime Minister what support we will be providing Ukrainian citizens settled in the UK who wish to reunite with their family members still residing in Ukraine. Many have watched their cities rapidly get caught up in this conflict and are keen to know what more we could be doing to support them to reunite their families.
Mr. Speaker, we will make sure that we support Ukrainian nationals who need to leave to visit to come to this country to meet their relatives. Of course, we'll do that.
Stephen McPartland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud the Prime Minister in this country are leading international support for our friends in Ukraine. Domestically, will the Prime Minister be providing more support for organisations such as our NHS, public sector organisations and businesses that will now be the subject of Russian cyber attacks?
He's right to point to this risk, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's foresighted. We're investing massively in cyber protection. I think another £2.6 billion we're putting in. I think in the last few years we've tackled more than 3,000 cyber attacks. It is a risk. It's a risk that I'm afraid we must run in the cause of freedom.
Matt Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to offer my wholehearted support for much tougher sanctions against President Putin and his dreadful regime. Mr. Speaker, as the honourable gentleman from Lockerbie mentioned earlier, there are many historic Ukrainian communities in Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and indeed I would like to commend the work of the Reading Ukrainian Centre. I would like to ask the Prime Minister what additional support can the government give to these very valuable community groups and centres around the country who offer such support to families, friends, relatives, both in the UK and in the Ukraine.
I think, Mr. Speaker, perhaps the most important thing we can do for the Ukrainian community in this country is thank them, recognise them for everything that they've done for us in the last decades. They've been an amazing addition to the UK economy, to our cultural and artistic life.
John Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House is united in its condemnation, but I suggest to the Prime Minister that the lessons to be addressed from this affair started with the invasion of Georgia, Russia's invasion of Georgia in 2008 and not 2014. And given, many of us across the House have been warning about Russia, and yet the response has been weak. Does the Prime Minister accept that as we enter the battle for democracy globally, we have got to understand that the sooner you square up to the playground bully, the better, and that we adequately support our hard and soft power to do that?
Yes, he is quite right, and I know that by soft power he's thinking also of the British Council, which can have such a wonderful beneficial effect across Russia, and I've seen its work across Russia. But Mr. Speaker, he's right about standing up to the playground bully. We should have done it ages ago. I think the scales have fallen from the eyes of many of our friends and partners.
Dr. Philippa Whitford.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. In an earlier response, the Prime Minister suggested that this country would welcome people who were reuniting with family here. I have a constituent who's Ukrainian, but a British citizen who's trying to bring her mother from Ukraine, but being turned down because she is over 18. Her mother is on her own, has no family, so naturally she's frightened. So will we see a change in the Home Office to enable British citizens who are Ukrainian to bring their vulnerable family here?
Yes, I thank her very much. I think I read out a helpline number in the House on Tuesday. I don't have it again. There is a number both in Lviv and in this country. But if she could do me the favour and send me the details, well, I'll take them up.
Richard Drax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I commend my honourable friend and his ministers for the firm stance they're taking? None of us know where or what Mr. Putin's longer-term aims are. If Ukraine falls, and I fear it might, his covetous eye might land on the Baltic states and other vulnerable countries. Can my right honourable friend reassure NATO members that if one Russian boot lands on NATO soil, military force will be met by military force?
Yes, and what is so encouraging, Mr. Speaker, is that the whole House understands the vital importance of that Article 5 guarantee that we make to every one of the 30 members of NATO.
Tony Lloyd. Sir Tony.
The Prime Minister quite rightly pits this as being a battle between the party of war and those who support international law. There is only one lawful government in Ukraine. That's the government of President Zelensky. If they are forced to move, forced possibly into exile in the short run or the longer run, will the Prime Minister state very clearly that we will make sure they can be a functional and effective government wherever they operate from?
It's a very important point that he raises. I'm grateful, and that's why in our discussions with President Zelensky, we are seeing what we can do to give them the practical support that they need to continue.
Robert Jenry.
The City of London is a global asset whose enduring success doesn't rest on dirty money. It rests on a commitment to excellence and on the adherence with the rule of law. So it's right that we now use that as a way to show global leadership. Can I encourage my right honourable friend to sanction all of the remaining Russian banks, to sanction the executives associated with them, and I notice that many are resigning today, to publish a further list of individuals, resident in this country or otherwise, to be sanctioned, and to redouble his excellent efforts to suspend Russia from SWIFT as the single most effective immediate step that the West could do to put pressure on Vladimir Putin.
I thank him very much. I thank him particularly for his important testimonial to the City of London, whose work should not be sullied, Mr. Speaker, by association with ill-gotten Russian money. But the programme that he set out for sanctions is exactly the right one, and the one the government is following.
Mike King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Will the Prime Minister reiterate that our quarrel is not with the Russian people? It is with their leader, Vladimir Putin, and he has committed a very, very grave error.
He is so right, and I know that that is what the House thinks. We admire the Russian people. Our links to the Russian people go back to the time when we stood shoulder to shoulder to fight fascism with the Russian people. Russia's contribution